Hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning into my talk. My name is Mark Johnson, I'm a lecturer at the University of Sydney, and this paper is about the off-camera or off-stream work and labour which go into creating successful or enjoyable Twitch broadcasts. Seeing as this is a game studies conference, I'm sure we all know what Twitch and live streaming are, but in case you haven't spent much time on the platform, Twitch is huge these days. There's several million people who regularly broadcast games content on the site, and well over 100 million people who routinely watch games content on the site, and both of these numbers have grown due to COVID, and at least a few thousand people make a full-time living on Twitch. And while, of course, not every streamer aspires to do so, quite a lot do. So within the last few years, the study of both game and non-game live streaming, both on Twitch but also to a lesser extent on other platforms, has really grown as an area of scholarly research. And one of the main threads within this field has been trying to make sense of live streaming as a source and a site of labour. And this is some of the authors who have been thinking about game streaming within these kinds of terms, including myself and my own work, which has tended to focus on streaming as a job, and the often quite strikingly entrepreneurial orientations of live streamers who do now, or who would like to in the future, make their full-time living from Twitch. In particular, though, I want to draw attention to Emma Wachowski and her co-authors' paper, in which they argue that there's quite a lot of hidden labour in live streaming which we generally don't get to see on camera. And while this is true, this kind of off-stream labour hasn't really been examined or theorised much to date. And so doing so is the goal of this paper, to ask what goes on behind the scenes which viewers don't see, what sorts of actors are involved in this, what sorts of activities are expected to be done, and so on and so forth. Methodologically, this paper draws on a still ongoing 5/6 year project on Twitch, which has had two main aspects. The first being extensive interviewing of both professional and semi-professional streamers, and the second has been a strong ethnographic engagement both online and also offline at major streaming events or at gaming events which lots of live streamers show up to. One of the most significant forms of off-stream labour is working on the graphics for one's Twitch channel, and this can take the form of the overlay which goes over one's channel, as you can see in the example in the bottom right here, or things like emotes or subscriber badges or donation badges or custom animations and things of this sort. And respondents strongly agree that this is something which is worth spending a quite substantial amount of time on. And while these do create a sense of someone's channel as being this kind of distinctive online place, it also brings with it a need for constant updates, upkeep, changes. Streamers spend a lot of time talking with their viewers about new emotes or which ones could be lost and so on. And all of this has even led to the emergence now of third parties who streamers pay in order to do some of this aesthetic work for them. Another central part of this for many streamers involves, in fact, spending time, which we might otherwise perhaps think of as their leisure time, in other people's channels. And while some of the goal of this, of course, is to make friends and to enjoy the content and all these sorts of things, for the more aspirational streamers, there is also an instrumental value from spending time in other people's streams. The goal here, in some sense, for some of these streamers is instead to advertise one's own stream by being very visible and very public in the stream of someone else who streams the same kind of games or the same kind of content more broadly. And even some streamers mentioned that there was a chance to, in some sense, poach viewers from other channels, where if it became clear that you were a well-known streamer who streams, let's say, Dark Souls games, and you spend lots of time and you are very visible in the chat in other Dark Souls streams, then there's a chance of shifting some of their viewers instead over to you. Thirdly, aspiring Twitch streamers also spend a lot of time and a lot of effort on platforms beyond Twitch itself. Lots of people, for instance, will upload edited versions or highlight reels of their broadcasts on to YouTube or other video sharing sites, and many streamers have their own dedicated Discords and also subreddits, and most streamers are very active in those communities as well as within their community when it's on Twitch itself. And so here what we see is that streamers are trying to encourage their viewers to remain in some sense engaged with them and their culture and their games and the sorts of content which they make, even when the streamer themselves is not live. And so in this regard, these sorts of communities for streamers on other platforms outside of Twitch become a place where people spend time and make friends and are always therefore inevitably reminded that this is within the online community of a particular streamer. Last but not least, streamers also talked sometimes about the kind of everyday maintenance activities which they do as part of streaming, and this is things like checking emails or looking into games that they might want to play, or talking with their mods, or looking at stats, and all these sorts of things. And while these seem quite essential to many Twitch streamers, and while these are in some senses the most basic or the most kind of entry-level labor activities which one would expect a streamer to do, only a few professional or semi-professional streamers in fact mentioned these sorts of activities. And why might that be? Well, I would like to argue that these sorts of off-camera labor activities have already become so commonplace in live streamers, not just those who do it as a full-time job or even those who want to, but just live streamers as a whole, as to no longer be noteworthy, as to no longer be something which streamers feel they need to explicitly talk about. And indeed, quite a few of the streamer respondents who mentioned these sorts of tasks did so in a tone as if they were talking about things which were so quotidian, were so standard, that they didn't need to be thought about in much detail, and that we as the researcher should almost in some sense take it for granted that they are spending lots of off-camera time doing things like emails and talking with mods and planning their streams and all these sorts of things. And so what we see here is that live streaming appears to be no exception to this ongoing trend of additional labor and lengthening work hours in many sectors of both online and offline work. So, as I've aimed to show here in high speed, and clearly I do this in the full paper also, although in slightly more detail, is that there are four main groups of off-stream labor which streamers report to doing, and these are managing the aesthetics of their channel, networking with other streamers and potentially other viewers, trying to engage with viewers and create related content on other platforms beyond Twitch itself, and also the day-to-day maintenance of their stream and of emails and of trying to choose what games to play and these sorts of things. And so the main finding here in some ways is that off-camera and not laboring are not the same thing when it comes to live streamers. But this is very different from what lots of viewers seem to perceive. And this, I think, is especially consequential when we think about how streamers present streams in most cases as being kind of informal and relaxed and off the cuff and so on, when in fact there's a tremendous amount of work taking place off screen in order to allow streams to adopt that kind of informal, friendly, everyday register. And this in turn further expands how we think about live streaming as a vocation, and also the different kinds of labor demands which it places on streamers, whether they do streaming as a full-time job, a part-time job, or as no kind of job, there's still labor present. And that's pretty much everything I have to say. Thank you again for listening to this paper. If you want to read some of my existing work on Twitch, check out some of these links. And if you would like a preprint of this paper, please send me a message on Twitter or by email or wherever, and I'll be sure to send it along. Thanks everyone, take care, bye for now.